My name is Kevin Marburger. I'm from Maryland, and what I do now would be, I guess, try to help other people that were in the same situation that I was, try to help them find the light and get out of that lifestyle. So 9/11 was actually when I decided that I wanted to join the military. 6 days after high school, went to boot camp in South Carolina, was selected to DC, where at 18 years old, I stood guard at President Ford's casket when he died in 2006. Did a couple of 175 funerals at Arlington Cemetery on the 21-gun firing squad. Then I went to North Carolina and deployed to Afghanistan in 2009 into 2010. When I deployed to Afghanistan, I was combat injured twice. My first one was March 27th. I was involved in an improvised explosive device while we were medevacing a local. And in my mind, that was the local's fault that we got injured, which is a really victim blamer mentality. And that, again, is a trait that continued with me throughout my life. But that was March 27th, got medevaced, came back June 8th. I was involved in a firefight, got shot. So they sent me back to the States. I did 2 more years and then got medically retired in 2012. I think from the time 9/11 happened, it was very much, in my mind, not really in reality, but in the reality that I created for myself in my own mind, was very much me versus them or us versus them. In regards to any aspect of life, it almost carried on that way, because in the actual war and combat it is. But it's just in those minutes and seconds where the rounds are firing. But I couldn't separate the two, so in between that, it became me versus everybody all of the time. When I got medically retired in 2012, it still was a me versus them mentality. And the me just transformed from guys in green uniforms to bikers in leather jackets. I joined a 1% outlaw motorcycle club that was whites only. And that really solidified in my mind at the time that the us versus them, or the me versus the evildoers, is indeed the whites versus everybody else. And that was something that I couldn't unsee at the time. Once I saw it, it just, like a cancer, it just consumed my entire being and philosophy, my way of life, my morals, traits, and personalities was all revolving around what color I just happened to be born into. They started allowing other races in the club. And for me, that was done. That was it. You've sold your morals out in the name of expansion, or whatever term you want to use. So I got away from the motorcycle clubs and joined an organization in Maryland. It was a white power organization, and met a bunch of like-minded individuals like myself at the time. And a lot of that involved wearing shirts of certain natures and symbols that everybody knows, and tattooing a lot of that on ourselves. I always wanted to live a life through violence, fear, and intimidation. So the easiest way to do that was one of my first tattoos. It was the Nazi Totenkopf, which is the symbol the SS wore on their collars and their hats and whatnot. I was just, in my mind, saying, everywhere I go, I'm the real deal. I'm here. If you got a problem, let's roll. A lot of the other ones were more warrioristic, because a lot of that culture is violence-oriented. And the best thing, the most distinguished and prestigious thing you can do is die for the white race. So I got life runes and Volk knots tattooed on me, which is the knot of the slain, the Volk knot, my willingness to die. I also have a bunch of Thor's hammers and whatnot, but on the back of my arm I have a mosque on fire. And that was actually a scene from one of my times in combat. We had a suicide bomber break the line inside the post and suicide bomb himself by a big old tank of petroleum. And it caught on fire, and there was like 40-foot flames. But that was really easy to take that chaotic scene from memory and put it on myself, and then that could transform right into a neo-Nazi tattoo. F these Muslims, this and that, and instead of trying to understand with compassion and love that everybody should lead a life of dignity, I can just put something ignorant on my arm at the time that I think is going to offend people and just scare people. In any type of skinhead culture, violence is just the currency that's used. The most brutal get promoted, the most brutal get known. You want to make a name for yourself. What kind of white guy doesn't want to stand up and defend his family, his people, his land, his race, his nationality, his wealth, his lineage? And that's the stuff you think you're defending, when in reality, you're just defending the stuff that they've put into your head that's not true. You're perpetuating the idea of them versus us, but it's really everybody. And that's something I learned later on when I got out of those types of organizations. It's not us versus them, it's everybody together. We're all on this planet doing this thing, man. and it's just everybody together. But you can't see that at the time because they do such a good job. The dogma that they teach you about us versus them. Daily beatings of other people were normal. You know, anytime we'd go to a bar, you know, we'd sometimes be wearing boots and braces, sometimes just have t-shirts on, but any interracial couple, it was on. You know, we lived 30 miles from Baltimore, and we would go down there purposefully, looking for people to hurt, injure, and scar in the name of some kind of white race that doesn't even really exist anymore. Everybody's a shade of gray, and who cares? Can I cuss? Yeah. All right. Who gives a shit, man? Any type of organization with ideologies like that definitely uses the disenfranchised to push their goals and their ideals farther into your head. It's always us versus them. It can never be everybody. The principle is that there's always somebody that does something bad, whether they're white or Latino or Jewish or it doesn't make a difference. It's just easy for them to spot out the ones that are not white. And that's the easiest way that they can push you farther and deeper and farther and deeper and farther and deeper. Anything that you see in life can be flipped and manipulated against you to make you feel like you are the minority, you are not. The only way you're the majority is standing up against this with these 5 other people that care. But it's not until you take the blinders off and take a step back, you realize everything that you're doing is out of fear. Everything, all these people that you're hurting because you're afraid. You're afraid that you're not going to be a member of a group, that you're not going to be as good as this guy or as pretty as that girl or whatever it is. But everything we do is out of love or fear, and all those organizations are fear-mongering. If we don't do this, the blacks are going to take over this city. If we don't do this, the Jews. If we don't do this, this and that and this and that. So the easiest thing is whenever you see somebody like that, you just smash them, you know? And I've seen it in combat where, you can watch a man's soul leave his body, and that definitely 100% changes a man. But once you see that once, it's really easy to get in the mindset that I could perpetuate that for the rest of my life for whatever reasons I need to. So I don't think I had a specific moment that was like mind-altering, saying this is not right. At first it was, I just don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to promote violence, and I don't want to use violence as a commodity to buy friends, happiness, love, feelings with. So while I was doing all this, I developed a massive drug and alcohol addiction. So I guess this would be a pivotal moment, right? I remember sitting in this guy's basement, we were doing meth, and we were up for like 4 days. It was just like blasted out of my mind, right? And this dude's talking about, all those N-words. They're living on welfare and this and that and this and that. And we're smoking meth in a guy's basement. He's like 50 years old. He lives in his mom's basement. He's been collecting Social Security since he's 20. You know what I mean? For a back injury, but I guess that was a moment when I started to see through the veil of lies of this thing and saying, you're just putting your own insecurities onto somebody else. And then those moments kept happening where you'd see people that made no sense. Like, there's a lot of really hardcore Christian skinheads, and they were talking about how God said that, whites were better than everybody else and this and that. But if you question it and say, well, wasn't Jesus a Jew? They was like, no, man, the Bible got it wrong, And I don't know if the Bible got it wrong or not, but I sure as fuck know this dude smoking crack with me's got it wrong. You know what I mean? So there was just a bunch of little moments like that. And then all of a sudden, the last Lego came out, and the whole thing fell apart, man, The whole thing shattered, and I saw how crazy I've been living and how stupid it was. It also coincided with my divorce. I lost a house, I was everything was falling apart. And that took me to a point where I didn't really want to live anymore. I didn't understand how to not be violent, abusive to everybody that I knew. I didn't understand how to live and not drink or drug. I didn't understand how to not hate people. And all of that for me was because I hated myself. I couldn't believe that these views were false, because if the views were false, that means everything that I've done for those views is false, which means this reality that I've been living in, it's a complete lie. It's a sham that I put into my own head. So for me to denounce the views, and that's how deep they manipulate you. Like I said, it's a spiritual level. Everything that I've worked for in my life up to that point is worthless. So I tried to commit suicide on June 12th, 2017, and it didn't work, obviously. But what that did do was start my life on a spiritual path that I didn't quite understand at the time. It sent me to a psych ward, but my roommate was a relapsed alcoholic, and he told me about this rehab right next to the hospital, and I went to this rehab when I got out, and it was $12,000. I said, I was living on credit. You know, nobody wants to give you a job when you're a skinhead. They said $12,000, and this guy said, well, what if I just tell you to come? And he said, what if I just tell you to come to this rehab? And I said, well, how am I going to pay for it? And he said, you're not. What if you just come to this rehab? And I said, sure. So I went to the rehab and I got sober, and that's when I started to realize that all these insecurities I had about myself that I refused to deal with, I projected onto other people of different races, sexes, genders, whatever it was, man. And you know, now I got a little over 4.5 years sober. And that's really cool, but that started the journey of self-reflection, which is a really hard journey. That sucks, man. And it's a really freeing journey because a lot of people don't have a chance to better themselves every day. Once you get to that point, it's a point of so much freedom and happiness and compassion that you don't quite know what to do. So I decided that I'd put some of that energy into a foundation. That's when I formed Veterans Addiction Foundation. It helps veterans that are disenfranchised, that are overlooked from a crowded VA system or whatnot, that have addiction, gambling, abuse, whatever issues, and we can help them find treatment in their areas. That has also stemmed off now into another organization that I run called Love Everyone, Serve Everyone, and I partner with Hunger Free Zone out of the Hare Krishna Temple in Baltimore, and they serve like 2,000 meals a week. Everybody within 10 miles of that temple gets a meal. So while I'm still working daily to get better, all the views that I've had from the past are just filled with compassion and dignity for everybody. And that's a really cool thing to have, you know? Nothing, you know? They have a right as a dignified human to live how they want to. The only thing that I can do is show compassion towards them. Sometimes that means not saying anything. Sometimes that means explaining. And sometimes that means taking whatever happens, the karma of my actions, determined by the dharma of my life, you know? And that's extremely hard to have somebody call me a bigot or this or that or whatever, to not understand where I was and where I am now, you know? I wouldn't say anything to somebody, that I would just let them express their violence or anger or frustration. You know, I had a guy the other day in the grocery store. Threw up 666s. He was a Klan guy. My wife was there with me, you know, and I was like, you see his hands? And she's like, what do you do? I said, it's a Klan guy, you know. What am I gonna do? Go over and say something to him, start a fight, show my children that violence isn't the answer, but then show them that violence is the answer to this situation? Just don't acknowledge the guy. Explain to the kids what that was. That's what I would do when somebody asked why my tattoos are like that. I wouldn't say really anything to them, but I'd explain it to my children. Society's kind of where it is, and generations are where they are mentally on this stuff, but the new generation's the one that can either get sucked into that scene of disenfranchisement and anger and frustration, or can be brought over to the side of dignified compassion and love. So tattoos were always something that's integrated with any type of like skinhead culture, biker culture, whatever. And I left my tattoos on me originally for reminders of like, hey, that's what you're gonna fall back into if you don't work on these principles daily. You have a small set of skills, Kevin. Let's use these skills to make better decisions. And finally that got to a point where the skills grew and the decisions became bigger. So I realized the best thing for me to do is to try to be a role model for people that want to get out of the life or that have gotten out of the life, and just get them removed. Originally I was gonna have them removed and covered up. I think now I'm just gonna remove them. I don't want them blacked out because they're still on me. I want them gone. The views are gone, the mentality's gone, the mindset's gone, get the tattoos gone. I have other tattoos that I will gladly leave on me because I love them and they're beautiful and they're works of art. But I want these reminders of how much I hated myself and how little I refused to work on myself, that I took it out on others off of me. there's an outlet and there's people like you guys, there's networks of individuals that care from all different kinds of hate backgrounds, violent backgrounds, whatever backgrounds, gangs, whatever, that are out there that care, that love us, that show we're needed. And that's cool to know that there's people that care. I think the biggest thing for me is knowing that this is the end of the line for that aspect of my life, you know. Books go on and pages go on and words keep going on to more pages, but to know that pretty soon there's another Roman numeral at the start of a new chapter for me, that's pretty cool, man. My name is Kevin Marburger. I was a former white power skinhead that now tries to spread dignity and compassion in a world that's being ripped up by these organizations. If you need help and you're a veteran, please reach out to my website, veteransaddictionfoundation.org. Call the Veterans Crisis Center if you need to. And if you're in need of spiritual help, cleansing, or healing, you can follow me on TikTok. It's Bhakti_Yogi, BHAKTI.